The great chamber of Concordia Prime stretched wide enough to hold 1,000 beings. Yet today it felt suffocating to Ambassador Elena Vasquez, as she stood before the 7 seats of the Galactic Council she had come here with. Hope 3 years ago when humanity first petitioned for membership in this ancient alliance, 3 years of negotiations, compromises, and patient explanations about Earth's culture and values, 3 years of presenting humanity's achievements in medicine, engineering, and peaceful exploration, 3 years that were about to end in the worst way possible. Arbiter Thexlon of the Valdry rose from his seat, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's soft light into sharp angles. He was ancient, even by galactic standards. Having served on the council for over 2 centuries, his voice resonated through the translation matrix. Cold and final, the council has reviewed humanity's petition for full membership, he began, and Elena felt her heart sink at his tone. We acknowledge that your species has made certain technological contributions to galactic society, certain contributions. Elena thought, bitterly humans had revolutionized medical technology for 3 species, solved the Kazani energy crisis, and established the safest trade routes in the Orion arm. But the Sloan continued, as if reading from a prepared statement that reduced humanity's worth to a footnote. However, we cannot ignore the concerning patterns in human behavior and history. Elena had heard this argument before during private sessions, but hearing it proclaimed publicly stung differently. Your species has engaged in countless wars among yourselves. Sloan stated your expansion into space has been aggressive and rapid, showing a lack of proper caution. Most troubling is your species' refusal to accept proper hierarchical authority. The other council members sat silent, some looking uncomfortable, but none willing to speak against the High Arbiter Counselor. Miraseth of the Plenary kept her eyes downcast. Her feathered crest drooping counselor, Vryn of the Korthi, shifted his massive bulk, but said nothing. Lena had thought she had allies among them, but now she saw the truth clearly. They feared Thexlon more than they valued fairness. Ambassador Vasquez. Thexlon addressed her directly now. Humanity may continue its relationship with the Council under a new framework. Here it comes, Elena thought, her jaw tightening. We propose protectorate status for all human worlds and colonies. The words hung in the air like poison. Under this status, humanity will receive the Council's guidance and protection. Thexlon explained, all human foreign policy decisions will require Council approval. All military actions must be authorized by this body. Trade agreements will be subject to our review. In exchange, humanity will enjoy the security and stability that comes from Council supervision. Elena translated mentally. He means control. He means subjugation. He means making humanity a servant state with no voice and no choice. She tried to speak, to present the counter-arguments she had prepared for this possibility. High Arbiter, if I may address the Council, the decision has been made. Ambassador. Thexlon cut her off sharply. We are not here to debate, but to inform you of the Council's judgment. Elena felt anger rising in her chest. Hot and fierce, she tried again, keeping her voice level with respect. High Arbiter, humanity has sought partnership, not guardianship. We have proven ourselves capable. Capability without wisdom is dangerous. Thexlon interrupted again. Your species is young and impulsive. You require guidance to prevent you from harming yourselves and others young. Elena thought, humanity had been traveling the stars for over a century. They had established peaceful relations with dozens of species. They had contributed more to galactic welfare in 30 years than some council members had in 3 centuries. But to these ancient beings, humanity would always be children who needed to be controlled. The Council's offer is generous. Thexlon continued, you have 1 standard month to accept these terms. Refusal will result in humanity being classified as an unaligned entity with all the restrictions that status entails. Elena looked at her small delegation seated behind her, Dr. Sarah Chen, who had shared her medical breakthroughs freely with Alien Species Commander James Park, who had coordinated rescue operations across 3 sectors, Ambassador David Okonkwo, who had spent years building relationships with Frontier worlds. They had all worked so hard for this moment. They had believed in the possibility of mutual respect and cooperation. Now they watched as that dream was crushed under the weight of galactic Arrogant Selena made her decision in that instant. She had been authorized by Earth's government to accept reasonable terms. She had been given flexibility to negotiate. She had also been given clear instructions about one thing: never accept subordination. Humanity had fought too hard for its freedom to surrender it for the illusion of acceptancy. She stood straighter, meeting Nexlon's crystalline gaze without flinching. High Arbiter, members of the Council, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 3 years ago, humanity came to you in good faith. We sought partnership between equals. We offered friendship and cooperation. We asked only for the respect that every sentient species deserves. She paused, letting her words sink in. What you offer us today is not partnership. It is not friendship. It is certainly not respect. Nexlon's crystalline form seemed to sharpen, light bending around him in agitation. Ambassador, you would be wise to consider. I have considered. Alina cut him off, and the shock of being interrupted silenced him. I have considered that humanity has contributed more to galactic welfare than we have taken. I have considered that we sought peace while you assumed we wanted conflict. I have considered that we came here hoping for equals and found only masters seeking servants. She gathered the data tablets containing humanity's petition, sliding them into her case with deliberate calm. Humanity withdraws from these talks. She declared, we will not accept protectorate status. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not beg for scraps from a table where we should sit as equals. Dr. Chen and Commander Park stood immediately, gathering their materials. Ambassador Okonkwo followed, his expression mixing sadness with pride. This is a mistake, Dexlon warned, his voice resonating with anger. Without council protection, humanity will be vulnerable. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for those who stand alone. Alina turned back to face him one last time. We are not alone. High Arbiter, we have friends among the species you have dismissed and ignored. We have allies among those who value freedom over hierarchy, and we have ourselves, which has always been enough. She looked at each council member, and Turnsome met her eyes with shame. Mothers looked away in discomfort. None spoke in humanity's defense. We came here seeking to build something better together, Alina said quietly, but you can only build with those willing to treat you as an equal. Humanity will remember this day. We will remember who offered us chains when we asked for handshakes. And when you realize your mistake, as I believe you eventually will, remember that respect once lost is not easily regained with that. Alina Vasquez led the human delegation out of the council chambers. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence behind them. The 7 members of the Galactic Council sat frozen, none quite believing what had just happened in 2,000 years of council history. No species had ever walked away from their offer. No one had ever chosen uncertainty over the security of council protection. One had ever valued dignity over survival. But then again, the council had never dealt with humans before. They were about to learn what that meant. 3 months had passed since the human delegation walked out of Concordia Prime, and High Arbiter Nexlon felt certain that time would prove him right. Humans would realize their foolishness and return to accept the Council's generous terms. Perhaps their pride would keep them away for half a year, maybe even a full cycle, but eventually necessity would overcome stubbornness. That was what Dexlon believed, until the first reports began arriving. Director Kelvin of the Kazani Mining Consortium sent an urgent message to the Council. The Kazani had been mining rare minerals from asteroid fields for centuries, but their operations had become vastly more efficient when human engineers helped redesign their extraction algorithms 5 years ago. Those same human engineers had stopped responding to technical queries. Kelvin's message was terse but worried. Extraction efficiency had dropped by 40% in the past month. 3 mining platforms had experienced critical failures that the Kazani couldn't diagnose. They needed human expertise to fix systems that humans had helped build. Dexlon dismissed it as a temporary inconvenience. The Kazani would adapt or find other solutions. Then came the message from the Torvin Medical Institute's Dr. Sarish. The chief medical administrator sent a personal plea to Counselor Vren. Humans had been working with Torvin researchers on revolutionary gene therapy techniques for degenerative diseases. The collaborative program had shown remarkable results, offering hope to patients with conditions that had been death sentences for millennia. But now the human research teams had gone silent worse. They had withdrawn all their data from the shared medical network's 17 Torvin patients in the middle of experimental treatments faced uncertain futures. Their human doctors had simply stopped coming, stopped responding, stopped sharing the knowledge that might save lives. Dr. Suresh's message carried a tone of desperation that troubled even Nexalon still, he reasoned. Medical knowledge could be recovered through independent research. It would take time. But the Torvins were resourceful. The third week brought news that could not be dismissed. So Isla trade reports from across the Orion Arm showed a disturbing pattern: human merchant vessels, which had become common sights along dozens of trade routes, had vanished, not destroyed or lost. Simply gone. They had returned to human space and not come back out. This might have seemed minor except for one critical fact. Humans had been serving as intermediaries between Council space and the independent frontier world species that the Council considered too minor or too distant to bother with, had found willing trade partners in humanity now. Those trade connections were severed. The economic impact rippled outward faster than anyone anticipated. Frontier worlds that depended on goods from Council space found themselves cut off. Council merchants who had profited from selling to frontier markets through human middlemen watched their revenues plummet more. Troubling were the security reports. Human patrol volunteers had been helping protect trade routes from pirates and raiders for the past 2 years. They had done this freely, asking nothing in return except the goodwill of safe passage. Those patrols had ended within a month. Pirate attacks increased by 300% in the sectors humans had been protecting. Merchant vessels from Council species began demanding military escorts. The Council's overstretched fleet struggled to provide adequate protection. 3 sectors declared economic emergencies as trade ground to a halt. Counselor Miraseth brought these reports to a special Council session 2 months after humanity's withdrawal. Her feathered crest was pressed flat against her head, a sign of deep concern among her people. We are seeing cascading failures across multiple sectors. She explained the humans were more integrated into our economy than we realized. Vexlon waved a crystalline limb dismissively. Temporary disruptions. He insisted the galaxy functioned for millennia before humans arrived. We will adapt and continue without them, but adaptation proved more difficult than the High Arbiter. Anticipated intelligence reports began arriving that changed everything. Agent Corbex, a Korthi spy embedded in the frontier worlds, sent an encrypted message that made Counselor Vren physically recoil. Humanity had closed its borders. Non-human vessels attempting to enter human space were being turned away at checkpoints, pwn lightly but firmly. With no exceptions and no explanations, not even diplomats were allowed. Through human space had become a sealed box, and no one knew what was happening inside. Worse still were, the reports from the frontier human colonies were expanding rapidly, establishing new settlements at a pace that should have been impossible. They were offering trade deals to non-Council species, agreements far more favorable than anything the Council had ever proposed. Species that had been marginalized by the Council for centuries suddenly found themselves courted by humans who treated them as equals. The free traders of the Zarkon Expanse announced they were negotiating a formal trade alliance with humanity. The mineral guilds of Proxima followed with their own announcement. Avon, the Yith Confederation, which had been petitioning the Council for recognition for 50 years, declared they were opening talks with Earth's government. Included details that made Council members uncomfortable. Technology transfers that the Council had always kept restricted. Mutual defense pacts that suggested military cooperation. Economic agreements with terms so generous they made Council policies look punitive by comparison. They are trying to build their own power block. Counselor Jarek of the Sethany observed during an emergency session, they are recruiting the very species we have kept at arm's length. Dexlin felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. He had expected humanity to struggle alone, to realize their mistake and come crawling back. Instead, they seemed to be thriving. They had taken their rejection and transformed it into opportunity. Galaxy had always had the Council and everyone else now. It appeared to be developing a third category: the Council, the unaligned, and humanity's growing alliance network. The economic reports grew worse each week. The Kazani Mining Consortium reported losses in the billions. Their stock prices had collapsed, and 3 subsidiary companies had declared bankruptcy. Torvin Medical Institutes announced they were suspending 17 experimental programs. Dr. Suresh's final message to the council carried a bitter tone. We could have cured suffering together, but pride chose isolation instead. Trade indices across council space showed contraction for the first time in a century. Unemployment rose as companies that had relied on human connections or human technology struggled. 3-member species formally complained that their economies were suffering due to the council's handling of the human question. That was when Councillor Vryn presented his intelligence assessment to a closed council session. His massive form seemed diminished as he shared what his agents had learned. Humanity has been developing military technology in isolation for decades. He began while they were petitioning us for membership. They were also building weapons. Their military capabilities were deliberately understated in all their presentations. Dexlan felt his crystalline structure vibrate with anger. They deceived us. Vren corrected quietly. They simply did not tell us everything. There's a difference. He displayed tactical assessments that showed human fleet strength, defensive installations, and weapon systems far more advanced than anything in their official reports. Why would they need such weapons if they sought peace? Dixlan de Mondemorsh spoke softly from her seat. Perhaps they understand something we have forgotten, that peace maintained through strength lasts longer than peace begged for. From a position of weakness, the chamber fell silent. Vren continued his report. Combined with their new allies, humanity could potentially match our fleet strength in a prolonged conflict. More concerning is their tactical doctrine, where we emphasize defensive formations and overwhelming force. They practice speed, adaptability, and unconventional warfare. Our simulations suggest any conflict would be costly for both sides. Dexlan could not believe what he was hearing. You are saying we cannot force them to comply? I am saying, Vrin replied heavily, that we have no leverage at all. They are self-sufficient. Our allies are loyal, and their military cannot be easily intimidated. We offered them protectorate status as if they were weak. They are not weak, they never were. Councillor Miraseth stood, her feathered crest rising. We made a mistake. She said simply, we saw their youth and assumed weakness. We saw their passion and assumed chaos. We saw their independence and assumed arrogance. We never considered that these might be strengths. Dexlan wanted to argue, to insist that the council was right and humanity was wrong, but the evidence was overwhelming. The galaxy was changing around them, man, for the first time in 2,000 years. The council was not controlling that change. 6 months after humanity withdrew from the peace talks, High Arbiter Vexlon convened the council in emergency session for the 4th time that month, though. News from the frontier had become impossible to ignore. Speaker Valen of the Yith Confederation stood before the assembled delegates, his insectoid form chittering with what the translation matrix rendered as satisfaction. The Yith Confederation is pleased to announce our formal alliance with humanity, he declared after 3 months of negotiations. We have established mutual defense agreements, technology exchange programs, and unrestricted trade partnerships. This Lon-esque crystalline form flickered with barely contained rage. The Council has not authorized such an alliance. The Yith have petitioned for Council membership. This unauthorized agreement violates. We withdraw our petition. Valen interrupted. The Council has kept us waiting for 50 years. It's always promising consideration that never came. Humanity offered us partnership in 50 days. The choice was simple. He transmitted a data packet to the Council chambers. Terms of the Human Youth Alliance, scrolled across display screens. Technology transfers that made Councillor Jarek gasp. Mutual defense clauses that committed human military forces to Yith protection trade agreements with tariff structures so favorable that Yith merchants would gain enormous advantages. And most shocking, a cultural exchange program that would see human teachers and Yith scholars working together to preserve Yith's history and traditions. They value what we are. Valen said quietly, not what we can provide them. They treat us as equals, deserving of respect. Can the Council say the same? Before Vexlan could respond, Valen departed, leaving the Council in stunned silence. That announcement was only the beginning. Within 2 weeks, The free traders of the Zarkon Expanse declared their own alliance with humanity their representative. Captain Toreg was less diplomatic than Valen had been for 200 years. We've asked the Council for protection from pirates for 200 years. You told us your fleets were stretched too thin. Humanity gave us patrol support in 2 months and asked nothing in return except friendship. Now they offer us trade terms that will make our people prosperous. The Council had its chance and wasted it. Then came the mineral guilds of Proxima, then the Helian communes, then the Traders' Federation of the Outer Reaches species after species, all choosing humanity over the Council each. Announcement included details that made the Council's own policies look increasingly inadequate. Humans shared technology freely rather than parceling it out in exchange for compliance. They offered genuine mutual defense rather than vague promises of protection. They treated their allies as partners rather than subordinates. Counselor Miraseth compiled the growing list of defections into a comprehensive report. She presented it at a closed session, her voice heavy with implications. We are losing the frontier, but she stated more importantly. We are losing credibility. 7 species in 6 months have chosen human partnership over Council membership. Each one cites the same reasons: respect, fairness, and genuine cooperation. Nexlon struck the Council table with a crystalline appendage. They are being manipulated by human promises. These alliances will collapse when humanity reveals its true intentions. No species offers such generous terms without hidden motives. Vren's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. What if their true intentions are exactly what they claim? What if humans genuinely believe in partnership between equals? What if we are the ones whose motives deserve scrutiny? The question hung in the air, like an accusation. Marist continued her report. In the next section made several Council members shift uncomfortably. Our intelligence services have compiled profiles of human diplomatic philosophy. She explained their approach emphasizes what they call enlightened self-interest. They believe that helping others succeed creates mutual prosperity. They think that respecting others' autonomy builds stronger alliances than demanding obedience. They value voluntary cooperation over enforced hierarchy. She paused, letting her next words carry full weight. These are not empty platitudes. They are principles embedded in their governmental structures, their historical documents, and their cultural narratives. Humans have fought wars among themselves over these concepts. They take them seriously. Exelon wanted to dismiss this as naive idealism, but the evidence was overwhelming. Human alliances were growing stronger, not weaker. Their partners reported satisfaction, not manipulation. The frontier was reorganizing itself around human principles, and the Council was being left behind. The economic reports grew more dire each week. Katten sectors now showed negative growth. The Kazani Mining Consortium had laid off 30,000 workers. Storvin medical research had fallen behind. The frontier networks by measurable margins. Strayed routes that had enriched Council members for centuries were drying up as frontier species found better partners. Then came the intelligence report that transformed concern into genuine fear. Agent Korvax sent encrypted files containing human military assessments, not just fleet strengths and weapon capabilities, but doctrine and philosophy. What he revealed shook the Council to its core. Humans maintain a principle they call peace through strength. Korvax's report explained they believe that the best way to prevent war is to be too dangerous to attack. While seeking our friendship, they were building defenses that would make conquering them impossibly costly. The files showed fleet compositions that emphasized speed. In hitting power over the Council's preference for massive defensive formations, they revealed weapon systems designed for asymmetric warfare rather than traditional fleet engagements. They documented tactical training that emphasized initiative and adaptability over rigid command structures. In simulation after simulation, Korvax reported, human forces demonstrate ability to achieve strategic objectives against numerically superior opponents. They do not fight the way we expect. They do not value the same tactical outcomes most concerning. They have clearly studied our methods and developed counters for our standard approaches. Vren stood to address the Council combined with their allies. Humanity now commands a military force that could match ours in sustained conflict. Their alliance network spans 40 star systems and growing. They have strategic depth, economic resilience, And tactical flexibility, most importantly. They have something we lack." He paused, his massive form radiating grim certainty. "They have allies who chose them freely and would fight for them willingly. Can we say the same about our own members?" The question struck at the heart of Council authority. How many member species stayed? Out of genuine loyalty versus fear of isolation? How many would support the Council in a real crisis versus seeking their own advantage? The humans had been in the galaxy for barely a century. Yet they had built an alliance, a network based on voluntary cooperation that seemed stronger than the Council's millennium-old hierarchy. Thexel refused to accept this assessment. "We must act before this situation deteriorates further," he declared. "I propose comprehensive sanctions against human space. No trade, no communication, no travel. We isolate them and their allies until they understand the cost of defying Council authority." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Counselor Jarek spoke. "On what authority would we impose such sanctions? What right would we punish species for choosing their own diplomatic partnerships? And more practically, with what leverage?" Jarek displayed economic projections that showed the impact of cutting off all trade with human space, and their allies' Council economies would contract by 20 to 30% critical. Supply chains would collapse, medical advances would be lost. "We have no leverage," Jarek concluded. "We are not in a position to impose our will. Perhaps we never were." Miraseth stood again, a crest rising in determination. "We must face an uncomfortable truth," she said. "We rejected humanity because we feared change. We offered them subordination because we feared their independence. We assumed they needed us more than we needed them. We were wrong on every count." She looked at each Council member in turn. "The galaxy is reorganizing itself whether we approve or not. Species that we dismissed as minor are becoming prosperous through human partnerships. Technologies we hoarded are being shared freely among the frontier alliances. Values we paid lip service to are being practiced genuinely by others. We can either adapt or become irrelevant." Thexlon's crystalline form seemed to dim for the first time in his 2 centuries of service. He felt the weight of failure. The Council had maintained galactic peace and prosperity for 2,000 years, but they had done so through a system that prioritized stability over justice, hierarchy over equality, and control over cooperation. Humanity had exposed these flaws simply by offering an alternative, and the galaxy was choosing that alternative in growing numbers. "What do you propose?" Thexlon asked. His voice lacking its usual certain timorish took a deep breath. "I propose we admit our error. I propose we approach humanity not as supplicants seeking their favor, but as equals acknowledging our mistake. I propose we offer to build something better together, something that respects sovereignty, values cooperation, and treats all species with genuine dignity." Several Council members murmured support. Others sat in stunned silence. 1 year after the failed peace talks, the Galactic Council convened in what many privately called a funeral session. The chamber that had once radiated confidence and authority now felt like a courtroom where the Council itself stood accused. Counselor Miraseth stood at the center podium, presenting what she had titled a comprehensive assessment of Council policy failures. Her feathered crest was flat against her head in a posture that her species reserved for moments of deep shame. 1 year ago, we rejected humanity's petition for partnership. She began. "We told ourselves we were protecting galactic stability. We convinced ourselves that our caution was wisdom. We believed we were preventing a potential threat." She paused, letting the weight of the past year settle over the chamber. "We were wrong about everything." The display screens activated, showing economic data that made even Thexlon flinch. 14 sectors now report negative growth. Council trade volume has declined. 43% unemployment across member species has reached levels not seen in 3 centuries. 3 member species have filed formal complaints about Council leadership. But the economic damage was only part of the story. The Kazani Mining Consortium has entered bankruptcy proceedings. Miraseth continued. Their board of directors has filed a lawsuit against the Council, claiming our policies directly caused their losses. They argue that our rejection of humanity eliminated critical technical support they depended on. The Torvin Medical Institutes have announced they are suspending cooperation with Council research programs. They state publicly that council bureaucracy and restrictions have hindered medical advancement. They are negotiating directly with human research facilities instead. Each revelation hit harder than the last. 17 frontier sectors have requested human mediation in local disputes. Miraseth stated they explicitly bypassed council diplomatic services when asked why. They cited faster resolution, fairer terms. In genuine neutrality, they trust human judgment more than ours, counselor. Jarek added his own observations. We have documented 43 separate instances where species choosing between council membership and human alliance have chosen humanity. Not one species in the past year has chosen us. Our influence is collapsing at the edges and starting to crack at the core. Vren stood, his massive form seeming burdened by the weight of his next words. 2 of our own member species have approached me privately. He revealed they asked whether the council charter allows for voluntary departure. They are considering leaving too. Join human alliance networks. The chamber erupted in shock.
How?
Murmurs council members did not leave. The idea was almost heretically. It here was. Vrin confirming that it was being seriously considered. Exel tried to restore order, but his crystalline voice cracked with strain. This is precisely why we must maintain discipline. He insisted if we show weakness now, everything will fall apart. We cannot allow members to simply leave because they find more favorable terms. Elsewhere, Miraseth turned to face him directly with respect. High Arbiter. Everything is already falling apart. We are not maintaining order through strength, but desperately trying to hold together a system that our own members no longer believe in. She activated another display, this one showing detailed analyses of human diplomatic practices. I have spent the past 6 months studying everything we know about human culture and philosophy, she explained. I have read their historical documents, analyzed their governmental structures, and interviewed species they have allied with. What I found was deeply uncomfortable. The next words came hard for her. Humans practice what we only preach. Their concept of alliance is based on mutual respect, not enforced hierarchy. They share technology freely instead of hoarding it for leverage. They offer genuine partnership instead of disguised subordination. They value freedom and autonomy as fundamental rights rather than privileges to be granted. She looked around the chamber at faces showing various degrees of discomfort. We have told ourselves for millennia that we represent these values. We have claimed to stand for peace, prosperity, and cooperation. But when humanity actually demonstrated these principles, we saw them as a threat. We were not protecting the galaxy from dangerous newcomers. We were protecting our own power from those who showed a better way. Counselor Vren accessed the historical archives, projecting records that stunned the chamber into silence. I have reviewed every technological advancement the Council has made in the last century. He reported every single one had human contributions. The medical breakthroughs we claimed as Council achievements were developed in partnership with human researchers. The engineering innovations we celebrated were based on human theoretical work. The diplomatic successes we praised involved human mediation. He let that sink in before delivering the final blow. Humans shared these innovations freely. They asked for nothing but acknowledgement. They contributed to Council prosperity for decades. Before ever petitioning for membership, they proved their value repeatedly and asked for partnership only after demonstrating it beyond question, and we responded by offering them servitude. The shame in the chamber was palpable now. These were not proud beings defending their principles, but leaders confronting their own failure. Amiris continued relentlessly. I have also reviewed the original petition humanity submitted. Do you know what they asked for? Not special privileges, not preferential treatment, not even guaranteed council positions. They asked for 3 things: recognition as a sovereign equal, the right to participate in shaping galactic policy, and mutual respect. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. We could not give them even that. We could not acknowledge their sovereignty without demanding supervision. We could not let them help shape policy without requiring our approval. First, we could not offer respect without attaching conditions. Exelon sat silent in his seat. His crystalline form dimmed. For 2 centuries he had guided the council with absolute confidence in its rightness. Now, he watched as that certainty crumbled. Counselor Jarek presented military intelligence that completed the picture. Our war simulations have been updated based on current force assessments. He explained a political conflict between the Council and the Human Alliance Network would result in massive casualties on both sides. Neither side could achieve decisive victory. The war would devastate multiple sectors and destroy the galactic economy most critically. Our own member species have indicated they would not support such a conflict. They see no legitimate cause for war against humans who have committed no aggression, Vren added grimly. Several members have privately stated they would remain neutral. Some have suggested they might even support humanity. Our alliance is held together by increasingly fragile threads. The chamber sat in heavy silence, too. 1,000 years of council authority was collapsing, not from external attack, but from internal decay. Had built a system that worked when they were the only option, but they had never prepared for someone offering an alternative when that alternative appeared. Their first instinct was to crush it rather than learn from it. Marasith made her final point: we face a choice. She stated we can continue insisting we were right and watch our influence disappear entirely, or we can admit we were wrong and try to build something better. She looked directly at Thexlan High Arbiter. You have led this council for 2 centuries with dedication and commitment, but dedication to a flawed system does not make it less flawed. And commitment to the wrong path does not make it right. Dexlon finally spoke, his voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it. What are you proposing? Counselor. Miraseth stood straighter. I propose we formally acknowledge our error. I propose we send a delegation to humanity to apologize. Not to negotiate from strength or to maneuver for advantage, but to genuinely admit we were wrong, and I propose we ask them to help us build a better system, one based on the principles they demonstrated and we failed to uphold. The chamber erupted into debate. Some supported the proposal immediately. Others argued it was too radical, too humiliating, but everyone understood that doing nothing was no longer an option. The vote was called this time. It was not close, 6 in favor. 1 against. High Arbiter Thexlan abstained, but his crystalline form flickered with something that might have been acceptance in the aftermath of the vote. Thexlan approached Miraseth privately. I have served this council for 200 years, said quietly. I believed I was protecting something precious. I believed the old ways were best because they had worked for so long. I believed that maintaining our authority was the same as maintaining peace. He seemed to age before her eyes, his crystalline structure showing fractures she had never seen before. I was wrong, he admitted, and because of my error, the galaxy has suffered. I will resign my position. Perhaps new leadership can repair what I have broken. Miraseth felt sadness. Rather than triumph, your error was one we all shared. High Arbiter, we all preferred comfortable hierarchy to uncertain equality. We all chose pride over wisdom. The fault is collective, not individual. She paused before adding gently, but yes, new leadership is needed, not to punish the old, but to embrace the new within days. Formal announcements went out. High Arbiter Thexlan had resigned. New council structure was being discussed. 18 months after humanity walked away from Concordia Prime, 3 ships departed from council space, carrying representatives from each member species. There were no grand fleets, no elaborate ceremonies, no displays of power, just 3 modest vessels traveling quietly toward human territory. Counselor Miraseth led the delegation. Her feathered crest held high despite the weight of what she carried. The journey to Olympus Station took 5 days. 5 days for Miraseth to review her prepared statements, 5 days to imagine how Ambassador Vasquez might respond, 5 days to wonder if humanity would even agree to meet with them when they reached the outer boundary of human space. A patrol vessel intercepted them immediately. The human officer's face appeared on the communication screen. Professional but distant, this is Commander Williams of the Human Defense Force. You're entering restricted space state. Your purpose. Miraseth stepped forward. I am Counselor Miraseth of the Galactic Council. We request an audience with Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Become unarmed and seek only conversation. Commander Williams's expression remained neutral. Please stand by the communication. Cut off. Leaving the delegation in silence, they waited for 3 hours before receiving a response. You are cleared to proceed to Olympus Station, Commander Williams informed them, You will be escorted by patrol ships. Do not deviate from the designated flight path. The tone was courteous, but firm. Humans were not rolling out welcome banners for the council that had rejected them when they arrived at Olympus Station. The contrast with Concordia Prime was striking, where the council station was ancient and ornate. Olympus was sleek and functional, where Concordia emphasized grandeur. Olympus emphasized efficiency, and where Concordia had separate areas for different classes of visitors. Olympus seemed designed for equals. They were shown to modest quarters, not the luxurious diplomatic suites they were accustomed to. Mirasith approved of this. It was a reminder that they came as petitioners, not dignitaries. They waited for 3 days before Ambassador Vasquez agreed to meet them. 3 days of quiet reflection, in comfortable but simple rooms. 3 days to contemplate the reversal of positions from 18 months ago. Finally, they were summoned to a conference room that seated perhaps 20 people, not the grand chamber of Concordia Prime, but an ordinary meeting space. Ambassador Vasquez was already seated when they entered. Dr. Chen and Commander Park flanked her ambassador. Okonkwo sat to her right. They did not stand when the council delegation entered. Another message, subtle but clear. Miraseth and her fellow representatives took their seats across the table. Silence stretched until Vasquez finally spoke. Counselor Miraseth, you requested this meeting. We are listening. Her tone was not hostile, but it was not warm either. It was the voice of someone who had been disappointed and was not ready to be hurt. Again, Miraseth took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Ambassador Vasquez, members of the human delegation, she began. I come before you today to deliver a message on behalf of the Galactic Council. She paused, knowing these next words would cost her everything. We were wrong. Humans showed no visible reaction. They simply waited for her to continue. 18 months ago, your people came to us in good faith, Miraseth continued. You sought partnership between equals. You offered friendship and cooperation. You asked only for the respect that every sovereign species deserves. Her crest drooped lower with each admission. Responded with arrogance and fear. We saw your strength and felt threatened instead of hopeful. We saw your independence and offered subordination instead of partnership. We saw your youth and assumed weakness when we should have recognized potential. She looked directly at Vasquez. We allowed pride to guide us when wisdom was required. We chose to maintain our comfortable hierarchy rather than embrace necessary change. We valued our own authority more than justice or fairness. Vasquez's expression remained carefully neutral. Go on. Miraseth nodded. The consequences of our error have been severe. Our economy has contracted, our influence has diminished, our member species question our leadership. But these practical consequences are not why I am here. She stood, a gesture of respect in her culture. I am here because we failed morally. We had an opportunity to welcome a remarkable species into the galactic community as equals. Instead, we tried to force you into servitude. You had a chance to build something better together. Instead, we clung to old patterns that serve hierarchy over justice. We had a responsibility to treat you with the respect you had earned through years of contribution. Instead, we demanded you prove yourselves worthy of rights. That should have been automatic. Miraseth's voice carried the weight of genuine remorse on behalf of the Galactic Council. I apologize not because the consequences of our rejection have been costly to us, though they have been, but because our actions were fundamentally wrong. You deserved better than what we offered. The galaxy deserved better than what we represented. She sat down. Her part finished, the other council representatives stood one by one. Offered their own acknowledgement of Aurorvarin, spoke of military intelligence that revealed human strength they had. Underestimatajik admitted that council economic policies had been exploitative towards smaller species. Others confessed that fear and pride had clouded their judgment when they finished. Vasquez sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. Counselor Miraseth, appreciate the courage it took to come here and say these things. I recognize that admitting error goes against every instinct of your institution. She leaned forward. Slightly, but I need to understand something. What changed? You rejected us when we asked for partnership. You offered servitude when we deserved respect. Now you come offering apologies. What changed between then and now? Miraseth felt the weight of the question. She could offer politically safe answers about changing circumstances, but Vasquez deserved better, honestly. Miraseth replied, "We changed because we had to, not because we wanted to. We apologize because the consequences of our error became too costly to ignore. I wish I could say we had a moral awakening. But the truth is, we had an economic and political crisis that forced us to examine our actions." She met Vasquez's eyes directly, however. "Through that examination, we did learn something genuine. We learned that the principles we claimed to uphold were just words, without commitment. We learned that hierarchy maintained through force is not the same as leadership earned through service. We learned that you were right about everything we were wrong about." Vasquez's expression softened slightly. "At least. Your honest Dr. Chen spoke for the first time. What exactly are you asking for?" "Counselor." Miraseth activated a data display. "We have drafted a proposal for restructuring the Galactic Council. Rotating leadership instead of permanent positions, genuine representation for all member species. Voluntary membership with the right to leave, mutual respect enshrined in the charter rather than just implied. Decision-making processes that require consensus rather than top-down authority." She paused before adding quietly, "It is based largely on your alliance networks. Principles we studied how you treat your partners and realized it worked better than how we treated our members." Vasquez reviewed the proposal in silence. Commander Park read over her shoulder, occasionally highlighting sections. Ambassador Okonkwo made notes. Finally, Vasquez looked up. "This is a significant change from the council that rejected us." "Yes," Miraseth agreed. "Will it be easy to implement?" Vasquez asked. "No," Miraseth admitted. "Will all council members support it? Some will resist. Why should we believe this is genuine and not just politically expedient?" That was the critical question. Mirish chose her words carefully. "No. You should not believe it based on our words alone. You should judge us by our actions over time. We are not asking you to trust us immediately. We are asking for the opportunity to earn that trust." She leaned forward. "Ambassador Vasquez, you were right 18 months ago when you said we needed to build something better together. We failed to recognize that truth then. We recognize it now, not because we are suddenly enlightened, but because reality has taught us what wisdom should have." Vasquez stood and walked to the window overlooking the station's main concourse. Humans and aliens moved together freely, working and talking as equals. No hierarchy, no subordination. Just cooperation. "You know what the hardest part of walking out of Concordia Prime was?" Vasquez said quietly. "It was knowing we were giving up the chance to help build a better galaxy. We wanted to be part of the council, to contribute to something larger than ourselves, but we could not compromise our dignity to do it." She turned back to face Miraseth. "You've learned something we knew from the beginning, that true unity cannot be imposed, only invited. That strength shared is strength multiplied, that the best societies are built by choice, not coercion." She returned to her seat. "Humanity will consider your proposal. Counselor, we will review your suggested changes to the council charter. We'll evaluate whether this represents genuine change or just temporary adaptation." Her expression grew serious, "But understand this clearly. We will never again accept less than we deserve. We will never bow to maintain peace. We will never forget that respect, once lost, must be earned back slowly and proven through consistent action." Miraseth nodded.